Hey guys, it's Brent within my head channel, and I'm back with another KISS album review. And today I'm going to be reviewing KISS's 5th live album and their 39th release overall, including compilation albums, live albums, studio albums, box sets. 39th release overall. I'm going to be talking today about KISS's Millennium Concert. The Millennium Concert was produced by KISS and was recorded at the BC Place in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada on December 31st, 1999, New Year's Eve. The album was originally slated to be released in 2000, but because of several reasons it was not released until 2006. It was then released on CD as part of a box set, as part of the Alive box set, on November 21st, 2006, and it was not released on vinyl until October 14th of 2014. Now, the history of the album is an interesting one. The album was originally announced in late 1999, and it was supposed to be the band's 4th live album, and also supposed to include original band members Peter Criss and Ace Frehley. The album's content consists mostly of audio that was recorded New Year's Eve in Vancouver, but it also included audio that was recorded at other parts of the tour, and also there's quite heavy overdubbing on it and some studio work done on it as well, especially on the backing tracks. But the album ended up not being released in the year 2000 and apparently wasn't even mixed in time to be even released for the band's farewell tour. So it wasn't actually mixed and finished to be released until several years later. There's also speculation out there that the album was delayed due to the fact that the band's then current label, Mercury, was bought out by Universal, and then the band was moved to the Def Jam music label. Now, allegedly, Gene wasn't too fond of this move, and so it's rumored that and speculated that that also caused the delay. But other rumors speculate that the album was rejected by the record company, by the new record company, due to poor quality. And Paul was even quoted as saying in April 2000, "We missed our deadline and we're still in the midst of it," suggesting that work was still being done on the album as far as mixing and recording overdubs and cleaning the album up. The album included different trackings and different sequences of the tracks depending on the medium, whether it was CD or vinyl, and depending on where you got it from, if it was an iTunes exclusive or it was a Best Buy exclusive, those had different tracks, and the different countries also had different track listings. And there were 3 songs on this album that had never been played by the original lineup, and that was Heaven's on Fire, I Love It Loud, and Lick It Up. Now, the 2014 release of the album on vinyl featured the entire set list except for Shock Me and Cold Gin, and the track listing was also moved around in order to accommodate being on vinyl. Now, the album's never been certified by the RIAA and is never charted, but according to SoundScan, that as of current time, as of right now, of the recording of this video, the album has sold about 150,000 copies. So we're going to get into the tracks, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going by the 2014 vinyl release. That's because it's the most complete. Like I said, except for 2 tracks, it includes the entire set list from that night. And you can find this set list on setlist.fm if you look it up. You can find it. I'll put the link down in the description there, and you can look it up and see the set list for that night and see that this set list was different. It was a special set list for this night. So we're going to go ahead and get into the tracks. This is a double album, 4 sides altogether. So we're going to start with side 1, track 1, Psycho Circus. Now, I'm not really going to go into who wrote it and all that other stuff because, you know, if you want to see that, watch my other videos. but all 4 band members performed on it. You know, this is Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter. And I don't like this version as much as I do the studio version of the song. I love hearing Ace's guitar. If you listen to this with headset on, Ace is panned really hard one way and Paul's panned really hard the other way. So you can take an earbud out and you can hear really well what Ace is doing. And the same for Paul too. But it's really cool hearing what Ace is doing on this. And I kind of focused on that a lot because, you know, I wanted to hear what Ace was doing. It's a great way to start the show. And this was the Psycho Circus tour. So they were supporting Psycho Circus at this time. And so I think this is a great way to start the show off. I'm used to seeing something like Detroit Rock City start the show, but Psycho Circus is a good way too. So I really like this version of it, so I score this song an 8. And so the next track, track 2, is Shout It Out Loud. This is actually a great follow-up to Psycho Circus. Even though I'm used to seeing it later in the set list, it's really good coming out of Psycho Circus and then starting off at you know, it's really cool. It's good, and the background vocals in this song were for sure either a backing track or they were recorded in the studio and overdubbed, because if you listen to it, they sound too clean and too perfect every single time. And I'm not saying that KISS can't do it, but more often than not, they don't do it. So I love this song and I love this version, but the backing tracks on it, they start getting to me because it's the same thing every time. And I do like that we get a little cameo from Ace towards the end. Ace comes in and says something like, "Let's everybody shout it now." He gets a little cameo there towards the end. It was good to hear his voice early on in the set. I score this song a 6 on my scale because I still like it, but those backing tracks, man, they really get to me. So we're going to go on to track 3. Going to go to Gene, some old school Deuce. Baby, if you're feeling nice, you know your man is working hard. Now, like I said, 3rd track in, they go old school. And I'm old school KISS fan, so I love Deuce. Deuce is an amazing song. It's one of my favorite songs off the first album. And it's awesome to hear Ace on this track. Ace just shreds on this track. It's like I'm back in time, you know. They sound like old KISS. And on these old songs that you hear on this album, some of the early stuff, man, they just sound so good. They sound so much like old KISS and everything. And I really love the way they sound. So I love this track. So I score this track an 8. So then we're going to go on to the next song. We're going to go on to a newer song by most standards, Heaven's on Fire. I look at you and my blood boils hot. I feel my temperature rise. Now it's interesting to hear Ace and Peter play on this one, because this is one of the tracks on this album that they didn't play on the original studio version. The funny thing I noticed is that Ace's rhythm on this track seems to be pulled back where it was in his mix. The mix seems to be pulled back compared to the first few songs. And I think that might have been intentional, because Paul, his rhythm guitar has a tendency to carry this song. It was cool to hear how Ace did the solo. It was a little different than the original, so it was good to hear his spin on it. But I like this track also. I like it about the same as I like the studio version, so I score this one a 6. So we're going to go on to the 5th track and the last track on the first side of the album, and we finally get to hear Ace sing a song, and he's going to do Into the Void. I'm losing power and I don't know why. Now, I love this song. It's one of my favorite songs off the Psycho Circus album. Ace sounds amazing in the sloppy way that I like for him to sound with his guitar and with his vocals. And it's true Ace. I mean, he's in his element in his vocals and his guitar playing. The solo is awesome too. He does an amazing job on the solo. But again, if you listen, these backing tracks, that Into the Void, it's perfect every single time. And it's too consistent to the point where it gets on my nerves. Because live, like I said, I'm not trying to cut KISS down, but KISS is not very well known for doing very good backing tracks or very good backing vocals. And so this almost sounds like, yeah, this was done in the studio. The actual backing tracks or the backing vocals was done in the studio. So, you know, that takes a little bit off of it for me, but still it's a great song. I love it, so I scored a 7. So now we're going to flip the vinyl and we're going to go old school again, going back to the first album, Firehouse.
She can move you and improve you with her love and
And like I said, I guess I'm just old school because I like hearing Hotter Than Hell going into Firehouse. I love how they transition from from Hotter Than Hell into Firehouse. But I freaking love this song. I love Firehouse. It's one of my favorites by Paul. I mean, he wrote it when he was 16. And what were we doing when we were 16 years old? I mean, we certainly wasn't writing songs like Firehouse. But it sounds great on here. Paul's voice still sounded so good during this time. And Gene's bass is fat and just fat and low. Ace's hard pan licks and the hit that goes throughout the song, and his solo is amazing. Gene's backing vocals on this sounds really good. This is just a great version of this song, and it is my favorite song on the album to this point. I score this song a 9. So next, track 2, we're going to jump to Do You Love Me?
and going to all of the shows, but do you love me?
This is an awesome track off the Destroyer album, and it sounds really great on here. The guitars sound great. Paul oversings on the verses just a little bit, but I'm happy to see a live version of this with Ace and Peter. Think about it. We didn't have a live version of Do You Love Me with Ace and Peter, and in my opinion, I think that this is one of the songs that should have been live on Alive 2 had they not done the 5 studio tracks on the fourth side. I think this, along with Take Me and maybe Mr. Speed, would have been some great live tracks to be on Alive 2. But I love how they do the instrumentation. They do an instrumental at the end, and I like how they do that. It's kind of, they go into this, they go into this little instrumental thing at the end. I think that's really great. So I score this song a 6. So next, we're going to move on to Let Me Go Rock and Roll.
I never knew I needed you like I do. Yeah, yeah.
Now, we all know this one, Off Harder Than Hell. I mean, come on. I freaking love this song, man. I mean, it's freaking Let Me Go Rock and Roll. I mean, okay, it's just with the 4 original members. I mean, you know, so, I mean, come on. What more could you ask for? Ace freaking destroys this song. He rips on this song. And they all sound great. I love how this has always been an extended jam. All the way back to the live album. This has been an extended jam song. In my opinion, and I know this is going to sound sacrilege to some of you out there, but in my opinion, this version on Alive, I want to call it Alive 4, but this version on the Millennium Concert is just as good as the version on Alive. They're still all tight. They still all sound good. They still all kick ass. And I like the recording quality of this. If I put this in my car with a high fidelity system, or here on my Bose in my music room, in my studio, and I play it versus Alive, this song on the Millennial Concert has so much more depth to it and so much more of a frequency range to it. So, I mean, I love the sound quality. I can't find anything wrong with this song. I love it from the first note to the last note. So I score this one a 10. So we'll go to the next track, 2000 Man.
Don't you know I'm a 2000 man?
So So yeah, we get back to Ace. Now this track was originally only available on the Best Buy version previously on Best Buy releases. Now I was happy to hear this song included with the vinyl version of the album. I know they switched to tracking around slightly from the original set list, but think about this. This was the first time that this song was performed by all 4 original members in this capacity, in a rocking live capacity. This is the first time that this song was performed and recorded since the Dynasty Tour in 1979 when I was 10. So, like I said, not counting the Unplugged album because that was unplugged. But I'm happy to see it finally included in a live capacity, rocked out with all 4 original members. They all sound great. This is one of my favorites off of Dynasty. Plus, singing 2000 Man on New Year's Eve 1999 going into the year 2000. I mean, come on. That's simply awesome. So I scored this one a 9. So now we're going to pull out that second album and we're going to hit that first side and we're going to start with Gene, God of Thunder.
God of Thunder! Rock and roll!
This also was only available on the original Best Buy release, and it got included on the 2014 vinyl. And you know you're going to have Gene's theme song on the live album with all 4 original members even. But I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about this version on this album that just falls flat for me. It's hands down not as good as the Alive 2 version. But I don't know why it falls flat for me, so it just does. But I still like the song, and so I scored a 5. So the second track, we're going to stick with Gene, and we're going to go on to I Love It Loud.
I love it loud. I want to hear it loud. Right between the eyes.
Now I like this song, but I've never really cared for it live actually. I guess it's just because on Creatures of the Night it sounds so freaking bombastic with the drums, with that doom, doom, and it always falls flat live. You can't get that sound live, and the whole yeah, you know, the way they do it on the album, and the chorus, the loud, I want to hear it loud, and the way Gene screams that right between the eyes. They never do that. I mean, Gene does it something on here like right between the eyes, you know, and it's just, it always falls flat for me. I would rather heard War Machine, you know. This is the second song that Ace and Peter never played on originally. This was off Creatures, and even though Ace was on the cover of that album and in the I Love It Loud video, he never actually played this song live. And in this concert on this night, this was the first time I Love It Loud had been played since 1995. And like I said, first time that Ace and Peter had ever played it. And the other song that's going to be coming up that hadn't been played since 1995 and never played with Ace and Peter is Lick It Up. So I like this song. I like this version of it. It's interesting to hear Ace and Peter on this and putting their spin on things. So I score this song a 7. So we're going to move on to the track I was just talking about. We're going to move on to Lick It Up. Now, like I said, this is the third track that the 2 original members, Ace and Peter, didn't play on the studio version. And I like the cold start where they just start off with the don't wanna wait till you know me better. They just start off. I'm not the biggest fan of Lick It Up. I appreciate it for what it is. I'm not the biggest fan of the song. There's several other songs on the Lick It Up album I like better than this one. But this version, they extend it and they do this little thing, I want you, at the end of it. And Ace ends up getting a solo during that. You know, Paul's like, I'm going to play some guitar. And he does that, and then they go into this thing and Ace gets a solo at the end of it. I really like that. And I like hearing Ace putting his spin on this, being he wasn't on the original recording. And I think it suits this album really good. So I score this one a 7 as well. So we'll go to the next track, which is 100,000 Years. This is another track way all the way back to the beginning, to the first album. And it's with all 4 members again. And it kicks ass. And I will again say, up to this point, Peter's playing has just been basically holding the beat down and doing the fills that he needs to do. But he's even done well on songs that he didn't play in the studio. And I like that they really didn't put solos by anybody on this album. Hayes didn't have a solo. Paul didn't have his long, drawn-out crowd interaction things that he does. Gene didn't have a long bass solo. And Peter didn't have a long solo during 100,000 Years. But he really sounds good. And Paul comes out and does. He has a little short thing that he does on the toms. Paul comes out and does a very abridged, "Do you feel all right?" Playing with the fans and everything. But I actually like if they would have done it the way they did it on here on Alive, since it has the shorter drum solo and has the shorter Paul talking with the crowd and everything. I really like this version, probably just as much as the live version, because I'm not really happy with the live version because of that extended drum solo and that extended banter that Paul does with the crowd. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of solos, and I'm not a big fan of extended banter on a recording because you kind of get lost in it. That stuff should be reserved more for you actually being at the show and seeing and being able to interact with it. And there's another thing I don't like about it at the very end when Paul says, "You'll reacquaint yourself with my style." He and just instead of just saying style and cutting it off, he does this whole thing where he goes and he like cuts down this like chromatic scale or whatever, and it gets on my nerves. I know that's just me being nitpicky, and that's just the thing for me. But I scored this one an 8. Still scored an 8. So we're going to the next track, Love Gun. Now again, if you know me, you know I'm not the biggest fan of the song Love Gun either. I have a tendency to sometimes not like a lot of the songs that are the fan favorites. But I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just not the biggest fan. I appreciate them for what they are. I respect them for what they are. I know Paul loves this song. He said many times before he thinks this is one of the best songs he ever wrote. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think Paul's wrote a whole lot better songs than Love Gun. I've always loved the drums on this song. I love those machine gun drum feels, those da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. I love that. Paul's voice is good in this. Paul sounds really good during this time. He sounds really good. I miss his voice sounding like this. But this is nowhere near as good as the Alive 2 version. So I scored this one a 6. Now move on to the next track, Black Diamond. I love how Paul just starts playing on this, and he's just and he's like, "You know this one?" And the crowd cheers, and he's like, "You know this one?" And they, I remember that. I remember them doing that. Paul asking people if they know the obvious songs. It's kind of funny to me. But Black Diamond, all the way back to the first album, and I really love on this whenever they go back to this first album on this, and you just hear that original Kiss sound. It's good to hear Peter sing. Peter gets to sing. He sounds great. It's like 1975 all over again. This feels very much like the Black Diamond off of Alive. And overall, this song is not as good as the Alive version as far as performance goes, but the recording quality is better. But it still kicks. It still kicks ass. It's all have awesome performances, all 4 members. Plus, I love this song. It's one of my favorites off the first album. And I've always loved the ending coda where they do Ace's amazing solo. It does that, everything at the end of it. That, he's so awesome. I love how they kept the original ending where they do the same note over and over. They do the burr. And they just slowly speed it up. And I don't care how they currently do it, where they do the I don't like it. It's like, what are we in fucking marching band? I don't like how they do it now. I like this, the way they ended on this. I like the way they do it. But But like I said, I'm old school. But I still love this. It's one of my favorite tracks on this album. I scored a 9. So the next track starts the encore part of the show. So we're going to be moving on to the first song of the encore, Detroit Rock City. So this was originally only available on the iTunes release, and this is another song that I'm glad they included on the vinyl version of the album. Like I said, Detroit Rock City starts the encore part of the show, and this is a great version. It's one of my favorite songs by KISS, but it pales in comparison to the Live 2 version, so I scored a 7. So next we're moving on to the next track on the encore set, Beth.
Beth, I hear you calling, but I can't come home right now.
Now, okay, if you've listened to me enough time, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of the song Beth. Once again, I respect it for everything it did for KISS and for it skyrocketing them to superstar. It's skyrocketing them to superstar. I respect Beth. I respect everything it did for the band, for it skyrocketing them to superstar status. I totally respect it, but I've never personally been the biggest fan of the song. But this is a good version of it. Peter sounds really good. He sounds good for the most part. I don't say really good. Let's say he sounds good for the most part. The Alive 2 version will always be my favorite version of this song, hands down. But I'm glad they put this on here. I'm glad Peter got another song. I wish Peter would have got another song also, maybe Nothing to Lose or something like that. But I like this version as much as I can like Beth. I like this version, so I scored a 6. So now we move to the last track of the album and the show closer, Rock and Roll All Night. Again, this is the song that KISS is known for, and most KISS fans either love it or they're really tired of it. It's obligatory at this point. I mean, you're going to get Rock and Roll Over at a KISS show, and it's probably most likely going to close the set. But I'm a bigger fan of the song Shout It Out Loud. As far as if you paired the two songs up to each other, I'm a bigger fan of Shout It Out Loud. But I like this version of Rock and Roll All Night more than this album's version of Shout It Out Loud. So go figure. But either way, it's a great way to end the record. I scored a 7. So how's this album rank for me? If you take all the songs, my score for all the songs, and add them up, that comes up to 131. There's 18 tracks on this monster of an album. And that comes up, if you divide 18 into 131, that comes up to 7.27, which sticks it as number 6 on my overall scoring. So if you look here at the list, you see that Alive 2 is still first at 7.75, Creatures of the Night is 7.66, Carnival of Souls 7.58, Ace's 1978 Solo 7.44, Revenge 7.33, and now KISS Millennium Concert comes in at 7.27, and then you can see after that is Dynasty at 7.22, and you can see the other albums there all the way down to the lowest scored at this point, Crazy Nights, at a 4. So what's my final thoughts on this album? And I'll tell you, I'm glad you asked, and I'll read them to you right here. So I really like this album, and I love the tour. It was nice to hear and see the original members back together, knowing it would be short-lived and knowing we would probably never see it again in this fashion. I know that they did a lot of polishing work on this album in post, and I don't mind that. In my opinion, it made for a great live album that featured the original lineup of the band. I hate that KISS dropped the ball on this album and that it came at a bad time with the changing of the labels, and the ego of Gene delayed it for so long. There would have been a huge difference in sales if this album had been released in 2000, riding that wave of the reunion and then the farewell tour. If this would have been released before Symphony, I think this would have sold a whole lot better. There would have been a huge difference. And I would have liked for it to officially be known as Alive 4. I called it a Live 4 because it's a live album, and I know everybody KISS officially calls Symphony a Live 4, but to me this is Live 4 and Symphony's a Live 5. That's just me. You're not going to change my mind. I also really hate it does not include Shock Me or Cold Gin that was played that night. It should have been. I mean, it's Shock Me and Cold Gin. Who knows? But I'm not sure the politics behind that. But to me, it's another missed opportunity to fully complete this album and make it better. But even with its flaws, its imperfections, and its missed opportunities, I still love this album. It's bittersweet at the same time that this would be the last KISS album with the original lineup. But still, I love this album, as my score reflects. So, that's all I've got for this one. Put down in the comments what you think about this album. Tell me what you think about it. And because I'm really curious about what the general populace thinks about Millennium, the Millennium Concert. And for those of you who stick around to the very end, I've got a little tidbit for you and a little treat. I don't know if you watch or if you know, but I always usually have some form of a script that I work with, and it's just my notes. And this one in particular was 4 pages. You see right here, there's 4 pages of notes. And so I thought it'd be kind of cool to have a little giveaway. So if you would like to receive this actual copy that I have in my hand, I'm going to, let me see if I have a pen. I'm going to write something on it as we speak. I have a pen right here. So I'm going to say, see it's not written on there, and I'm going to say, what can I write on here? I'm going to write down here at the very bottom, to be given away. Exclamation point. See that right there? To be given away. Alright, so I'll sign this and I'll write you a little note on it. Not a love note, but I'll write you a note. If you're interested in receiving this very copy right here, just put down in the comment. Just say, hey, I want to receive the script, or send me the script or whatever. Just mention something script. And what I'll do is I'll take your names, I'll write down your screen name, and I'll put it in a random selector, and it will randomly select somebody, and I will then announce in one of my next videos I make, one of my next little short videos, I will announce who's going to get this. And let's say we give it till the end of, how about the end of April? How about that? We do give it till the end of April. So anybody that comments between now and the end of April 2019, you'll be put in a drawing to receive this script. If you could care less, then just comment on something about the album. But anyway, I just want to be able to interact with you guys and be able to give you something. And like I said, I know it'd be kind of cool if I was watching a channel to get the actual script that they used, in making their video or whatever. But anyway, that's all I've got for today. I really appreciate you guys watching and being patient for my KISS videos to come out. But I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm Brant Within My Head channel, and I'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.